Good evening, everybody. Welcome to this call. It's great that you could join us. This is a panel where we can hear from the up-and-coming generation on their experiences of racial inequality and injustice, and what we can do to stop that from happening. My name is Russell Hobby. I'm co-chair of this session. I am chief executive of Teach First. We're really delighted to be co-hosting this session. We're not here to lecture anyone as an organization on how to tackle racial injustice. We're here to learn. We've got as much to learn as anybody on this one. And I'm delighted that we're joined by people who can share some really powerful experiences, I hope. I'm going to hand over to my co-chair, Lanai, to introduce herself and say a little bit more.
Hello and welcome everybody. My name is Lanai. I'm 19 years old and I have predominantly been volunteering with the charity Volunteering Matters on the project What's Up, which stands for Women Against Sexual Exploitation and Violence Speak Up. I've been doing that for about 4 years now, and I also am a #IWill ambassador. And just for where I am in the world, I am currently in Birmingham as a university student for nursing, and predominantly I spent my school years in Ipswich. So yeah, and I'm so excited for you to hear from the rest of our incredible panel today. So who wants to go next and introduce themselves?
Everyone's being polite here.
Claire, go on. I'm picking on Claire.
Hi, my name is Claire. I am 16 and I am a college student in Manchester. I am also an iWill ambassador. I've been one for a year now. I have been working with a bunch of different organizations, but my social action journey really starts with Lonely Not Alone, which was a campaign focused on bringing more attention to youth loneliness in the UK. I'm so excited to be a part of this and just to really think about this issue and really understand why it's so important to talk about more experiences like this.
Sadia, go next. Hi.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Sadia and I am 18 years old. I am from Wales, based in Swansea specifically, and I'm currently in my first year of university. I'm very excited to be here. I've been a young ambassador for over 4 years now, and I've recently been a part of a peer research project investigating the indirect and the direct racism that's experienced by BAME young people in schools all across Wales. So I am really excited to be a part of this panel today to not just share my experiences, but other people's experiences as well.
Hi, I'm Adam. I'm a 19-year-old student from London, but I'm currently studying at the University of Chicago, so I'm in the US currently. I've been involved in the iWill campaign for the past 4 years, and just before moving to the US as co-chair of the education group, so doing all the education stuff we do and really pushing for a focus on reaching the most underserved and the most disadvantaged. I'm super passionate about education and racial diversity because education, I feel, has the biggest impact on the most disadvantaged and has changed people like me and so many other Black youth. And I think when racial inequality is so inextricably linked to economic inequality, we really have a duty to make sure that education is fairer, more equitable, and better to ensure that Black youth can have as much of a chance as possible to achieve our dreams and to do what we want to do in life.
Thank you very much for introducing yourselves. Through the power of Zoom, we are gathered together from all around the world on this one, which is really, really powerful. We would love to get questions from the audience. Please use the Q&A function that you have available to you, and we will stack them up and try and get to them all. We'll figure out who's best placed to answer each question as far as we can. I'm going to sort of warm us up a bit with a couple of questions, just so we can get a flow of those coming in. You've all indicated that you're involved in youth social action, and particularly in the Power of Youth event and conversation that's going on at the moment. Just by way of getting us started, I'm really interested in what drew you to get involved in this work. Maybe if I could start with Claire on that one, if you're happy to start.
Yeah, so I think my social action started with Youth Voice and making sure that more young people were integrated in these big decisions. And from that, I realized that there was a crossover between the racial injustices going on and how more people of color need to be involved in decisions and conversations about them. So when I got this opportunity, I was so excited, and especially because education, I think it is really one of the root causes of the way that young BAME, POC really experience racism. And because we go through education from such an early age, and as we grow up, education develops with us, a lot of our experiences of discrimination are linked towards education, but it's something that isn't really talked about. So I thought it would be a great opportunity to share my experiences, the experiences of my friends, and how racism in education has really become more prevalent to me as I have grown in my social action too.
Thank you, Claire. Sadia, would you like to respond on this one?
Yeah, so so for me, my journey, it all started when I moved to college, and you know, I saw that, you know, girls like myself from ethnic backgrounds, and also that were Muslim as well, had an issue to do with like sports. There was a barrier, and I kind of spoke to them, found out what those barriers were, and then I was able to facilitate my own sports sessions in school. So that's where like my leadership journey kind of started. But in terms of like racism, I think after the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement this year, it made me stop for a moment. I've always been a very vocal person, but it just made me stop for a minute and think to myself, okay, like what is it that I kind of want to do? And I think first thing I wanted to do was kind of educate myself. And so when the opportunity came to be a part of a research project, I kind of took that on board, and it was so amazing to be a part of a research project where I was able to get so many different insights, so many experiences that I could relate to. And now that we've finished that peer research project, the report isn't out yet, but now that we've finished that, it's about now sharing those experiences and looking into developing projects to kind of influence policies and to kind of make an impact on the education system.
Thank you. Adam.
Yeah, I first, I guess, got involved, also fell in love with youth social action because I guess these were like my first opportunities in secondary school, where I saw young people like me, diverse young people across the community, working together to make a change on something that we cared about. And I felt like that was so meaningful for me, and I know for so many Black and mixed race young people, because we study in school being told by teachers, or we feel from teachers that they don't expect much of us, or that they're surprised that we do well, they're surprised that we're not following what other people like us are doing. And for me, youth social action was one of the biggest experiences that made me realize I could make a change. And I felt so passionate about ensuring that every young person can be involved in youth social action, because to me it was a way of ensuring that all Black young people can see that they can make a change, believe in themselves, and have the passion and the motivation to be able to achieve whatever they want. And I feel like that's the biggest thing that youth social action can give a young person, and it's something that we as Black and mixed race children need especially. So yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to pass back to my co-chair, Lanai, now to see if you want to draw those threads together. I'm giving you the hard jobs on this one.
No, that's fine. Thank you for those answers, everyone. I think we've heard the term diversity a lot there, and I think school is one of the biggest environments I can think of that is naturally diverse, where you can't control who's actually going to be in your school. And even in the most rural areas, it's wonderful that schools can be diverse. But I urge you all to remember that diversity does not equal inclusivity. And actually, I do find, although schools are naturally diverse, as we've heard from our panelists today, it doesn't necessarily translate to them actually feeling included, that being in the curriculum, and all of the other kind of the social side of school. And I'm really looking forward to going into detail throughout this to see how anyone watching, teachers, even students, what you can do to make your school a more inclusive place. Yeah.
Thank you. Let's one more question from me, and then we'll move towards some of the questions coming in from our audience, which is there's some really good ones coming in there. Just to build on the point that you made, Lanai, in terms of, I'd like to understand the personal experience of members of this panel of racial injustice, if you're able and willing to share how it has affected you, a specific example, or more generally. Maybe, again, if I could just go to Claire to start us off, and then we'll do Adam and then Sadia. Claire, what would you, what's your experience of racial injustice in the education system specifically?
So I was born in this country, and for me, I think when I was younger, I think I didn't understand that being Black, being African would mean that I was treated differently. Especially in school, people were so shocked and surprised that I talked the way that I did, that I even spoke English, even though I was born here. And it was the little experiences that made me realize that this was going to be something that I would have to face and deal with in the long term. And then seeing how family members were treated and friends were treated in a place that's supposed to be safe, and a place where every pupil is supposed to feel comfortable in school. And the portrayal of Black people in curriculums, it was so skewed from the way that Black people are today. I have only ever been taught about an African in the context of a slave, and that is something that is not only puts a detriment to our community, but it enforces stereotypes that are not true to today's society and modern Black people. I think it is so important to talk about slavery, and especially the play that England had, but every time that was talked about, it was in America's part to play, and it was always about Black people and all of the horrible things that happened to us. And we never got told about the successes, about the growth of Africa, and the technological advances that we've made. And I suddenly realized that I wasn't going to be treated the same, and that I was going to have to fight to have my identity, and I was going to always have to be in pursuit of myself and my identity as a young Black woman, because of all of these stereotypes and all of these boxes that I had been put in before.
I'm not hearing Claire anymore. Is that just me, or has Claire got cut off?
Racism, oh gosh, affects you from your soul, and really changes the way that you view yourself as well.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for that. Adam, would you like to share your experience?
Sure, yeah. So as a mixed race boy, my story perhaps is a bit different, but it also was like something I struggled with a lot during secondary school. I guess I admit that I almost tried to hide the Blackness and the Black culture in me, because I always felt like it was never accepted. None of my friends or like no one in my environment like enjoyed my music and my Black culture. I would actually hear teachers when I was doing social action talk about how they were so surprised that like someone like me was doing social action and was enjoying it and doing well, and that I wasn't following other people basically like me. And when we'd have classes on the British Empire, whenever my history teacher would like try and give a reason as to why the British Empire was better than worse, he'd say, "Oh, this is something you're going to enjoy, Adam," as though to aggravate me. For reasons I don't even want to think of, don't even want to try and understand. But I think for me, like all this, like when we talk about, you know, these racist experiences, and when we talk about like the lack of Black content in the curriculum and so on, and the kind of behavior that teachers, you know, use, it brings about to me like the importance that we can't only be, you know, not racist, even we can't only be anti-racist, but we need to actively celebrate Blackness and Black culture. We need to make sure that Black children are not just like, that they're not just comfortable that they're not going to be attacked, but they're comfortable that we can celebrate the Blackness in us and be proud of it and share it with everyone else in the same way that England shares all the other aspects of British culture. And I think that's so important to me, and something that I feel like when we talk about solutions, that's something we actively all have to do, not just be anti-racist, not just not be racist, but be celebratory of Blackness.
I keep forgetting to take myself off mute. Thanks, Adam. Sadia, would you like to share as well?
Yeah, so for me, when I was growing up in Wales, the city that I live in, Swansea, it wasn't as diverse. And so the schools that I went to, there weren't as many people that looked like me, you know. So I was like, you know, one of the only Black children there. And so I did experience a lot of racism, a lot of comments from, you know, other people's, sometimes parents, and it was very difficult for me to kind of deal with. And because I started wearing the headscarf as well at a young age, it was kind of like a double-edged sword. So it was very difficult for me to understand, you know, why people treated me differently. And at the same time, it was like very difficult for me to like just understand myself and my identity. And identity is such an important thing that's just not talked about. Young when you're going to school, you start kind of noticing yourself more. You start having certain feelings about yourself. So growing up, that was definitely something that I experienced, as racism and Islamophobia followed me everywhere. So when I went to comprehensive school, it was the same thing. The school that I went to wasn't diverse either. um However, like, I was just very, very fortunate that the school that I went to made sure that they had a zero tolerance policy on racism that they actively acted on. So when other students, when there were certain incidents where other students were saying very, very horrible things to me, action was taken. So that kind of made me feel better. But like I said, for me the biggest thing was probably the issue with identity. And what's very, very funny is now that I'm studying in university, I recently looked at a study called the doll study, which I don't know if many of you are familiar with, but it was a study conducted by an African American psychologist. And he did this in America back in the 90s, and he did it with infants, so 4 and 5 year olds, and he put two dolls in front of them, one black doll, one white doll, and he would ask them questions like, which one's the good doll, which one's the bad doll, which one's the beautiful doll, and like all the negative answers, they would direct towards the black doll, and then all of the positive answers would direct towards the white doll, which goes to show, and it just went to show and highlight just the impact that the things going on during that time had on the young Black peoples, and how they kind of perceive themselves and their identity. So yeah.
Thank you. Lanai, can you respond to that or draw any of those threads together?
I will quickly share some of my personal experiences. I definitely can relate to some of the things the panelists have said. Definitely throughout my high school period, I faced a lot of racist bullying throughout, and I am of dual heritage, but there was not a day I wasn't reminded that actually I was Black and I was different, and that essentially that wasn't okay. My natural hair, my features, my culture. Every day when I go into school, I'd be made to feel ashamed of those things. And I think that's why today I stand so proudly in my Blackness. And it's not to say that actually I don't celebrate all of the parts of my heritage, but actually it's to make that statement that nobody can tell me my hair's not professional, and people can't question the things I eat or the things I do related to my African heritage. And so I think definitely the way that schools handle racism must be improved, because it was never dealt with well. In my school, I remember being sent out of a classroom when I was being tormented, because essentially it was that I was the problem. And I think a lot of the time for my peers, it was seen as actually it's banter and you need to relax. And so you can imagine the impact that has. And I think definitely when looking at fulfilling those prophecies, when you are experiencing those things in school not being celebrated in your curriculum, it translates later on in life to feeling that lack of empowerment after school. And just quickly to touch on some statistics, obviously we have just Adam here representing the boys, but I wanted to touch on exclusion rates of Black men specifically, and those of mixed and Black heritage are excluded 3 times more than their white counterpart, predominantly Black males. And I think often it's easier, schools feel it's easier to exclude them than to actually deal with their behavior. And I'm not trying to say that they might not be behaving badly. They might be behaving very inappropriately. But the point is, we have to acknowledge, why are they behaving in that way? Is it because actually they're being oppressed in school? And so actually the way that they are then projecting that is with bad behavior. And so actually the real way you can fix it is not excluding them, it's by keeping them in the school and actually asking them, what can we do to make this place more safe for you? And I'm hoping, as much as we will share our negative experiences today, that we look at the many positives, because I think sometimes when we get caught up in the negatives, actually, I don't want you to have to hear that side to be motivated to make change. We deserve to be heard and celebrated, even if we're excluded equally as our white counterparts. That's really important to note.
Thank you. And a set of very powerful insights to share there. If we needed any reason to take this as seriously as possible, I think the thread of those stories gives us that reason, although many people on the call will need no further reason for this. I want to draw in some of the questions now that we've been given. A couple which are not questions, they're just comments here that I just want to share. Racism touches your soul. Claire, that is so powerful. I think what often gets left out of the discussion around racial inequality in education is how deeply it can feel and how it impacts how you see yourself. So thank you so much for sharing that. And another comment about how powerful those contributions are. So thank you for those questions. I want to go to one specifically here, and Claire, I'm going to ask you to respond on this one. With the recent racist comments around the new Sainsbury's Christmas advert that featured an all-black family, do you feel that racist feeling in the UK is increasing and becoming more public? Is there anything that can be done to curb these comments, especially on social media? Claire, over to you.
I think one thing that people, I think, is a misconception about racism, especially with the resurgence of the Black Lives Matter movement, is the fact that racism has always been around. It is just more prevalent. It is more obvious to people now that they have taken the time to educate themselves, now that more people are speaking out about their experiences. Racism has always been here in the UK, and it is just recently that people are using their voice and are feeling comfortable enough and are putting their hearts on the line to share those experiences now. I did come across a few threads about the Sainsbury's advert, and I think it is just showing how important it is to educate others. I don't think that comments like that should be I guess taken down. I think more attention needs to be brought to those comments, that people feel comfortable to say those things, that those are the thoughts that are going through people's minds when they see a Black family shown on a Christmas advert. I think more people need to realize that these conversations do go on, that people think this way, and to remove those comments from social media, or to I don't know, to censor them, would just remove the experiences of the everyday experiences of so many Black and mixed people. Representation has always been a massive issue for Black people, and a Christmas advert got so many people riled up. A 30-second ad meant that so many people felt so annoyed. And I think more people need to talk about that. Why did this happen? Why do people think this way? And I think it just shows how long-term education about racism needs to be. It is not something that is going to be changed in a day. And I think more people need to accept that this is a change that is going to take some time, but it is change that needs to happen.
Thank you. And that's a strong point. You're not calling for the comments to be censored here. You want to hear the truth of what people are thinking so that you can respond to them and tackle them, which I think is a really powerful point to make. I'm just looking at further questions. I just want to check. Sadia, do you want to come in on this one, or do you want to come in on the next question?
On the next question.
Very good. Sorry, I'm revealing our inner workings here, but I'm struggling to keep up on my on the chat. So the next question, and thank you for the answer to that. We've got plenty of teachers listening in now. What would you advise a new teacher who may not be coming from a diverse background themselves, if they're about to start work in a diverse school? What could they do? What would your advice be to them? Sadia, I'm going to come straight to you on that one.
Okay, so I have a couple of pieces of advice for this one. So the first thing I'd say is just to really educate yourself, because sometimes, you know, especially the society we've been brought up in, we do have unconscious biases. So it's so important to kind of check yourself and educate yourself. Okay, educate yourself on the issues that are going on, you know, and then just a couple of things when you do start in that school as well, to just really like get to know your students, really get to know them. And it's like you have to realize there's small things that just mean a lot to students. So for example, students' names, like really take in the time and effort to learn students' names, their full names. No, I know sometimes some people shorten their names down to make it easier for other people to pronounce, but like people's names are part of their identity, so it means a lot to them. So that's another thing. That's one that I think a lot of people kind of forget about, you know. I do have a twin brother, and so my name's Sadia, his name is Saad, and one of my teachers used to always call me Saad, and I would always get so upset because she's not calling me by my name anymore, she's calling me somebody else. So you never know like how you will make a person feel, and you have to remember, as this is my last point, you have to remember that as a teacher you're the role model, but you also have a certain sense of authority, like in the classroom, for example. So the way that you the way that you treat your students, it will set an example to how other students treat how students treat each other. So, you know, if you, for example, are targeting a certain student, or for example, if you're not pronouncing the student's name properly and you're not bothering to learn it, other students will pick up on that as well. So it's like I said, just remembering like your responsibility, your role in the classroom, and checking up on that, and making sure that you build a relationship with your students. Your students will be much happier if you do this. So yeah.
That's a very tangible step for a new teacher. Adam, I think you wanted to come in on this one, and then I'll go to Lanai.
Sure, yeah. I guess I was just thinking about, like, I guess I feel like these like principles of change are applicable to this in almost every scenario. And it's always, for me, it's like, it's that if you want to make change, you have to learn about the thing you want to make a change in. You have to believe in the change that you're trying to make, and you have to engage in it deeply. You have to be actually involved in it. So if you use those principles to this, you have to genuinely show that you believe in the young people that you're dealing with, because belief is the most powerful thing you can give them when they're surrounded by people who don't believe in them and are trying to push them down. You need to learn, you have to show that you want to learn where they're coming from and learn who they are. And that means, like Sadia was saying, trying to know their name, try to know everything about them and their culture and their community that you don't understand or that you're curious about. And then engaging means that you're actively that you see them as collaborators, that you're not just, as any good teacher is, right? You're not just telling them what to do. You're not just pushing them down when they behave badly, when they're being pushed down all the time. And so they think, why shouldn't I behave badly? Instead, you're working with them, you're lifting them up, and you're showing them that together you can develop and make that change together. So if you use those three principles, believe, learn, and engage, I feel like the real change hopefully can be made.
Believe, learn, and engage. Lanai, what would you like to add?
So just going off Sadia's point on learning names and the importance of that, I think it also can relate to the LGBTQ plus community in relation to the fact that actually do you know or are aware of some young people not necessarily belonging or wanting the pronouns that you're assuming of them. So I think in general, actually, how are you addressing, do you say, and we all do it, morning guys, or hey girls, what are you doing? Or even going as far as, oh, like they're flirting, and all of those silly, unnecessary comments can actually have an impact, because we must understand that actually through school, their identities are changing and growing so much as young people. And so don't go in and assume what they might want to be referred to as. It's always better to ask than assume in every situation. Now, I wanted to mention that my sister is actually a primary school teacher in inner city Birmingham. And I know, living with her, I know how difficult the job is. It is not just a 9 to 4 thing. Like, I know all of the teachers watching will probably be doing way more hours than you should be. However, I'm not going to make this easier for you, but you have a massive responsibility. And, with your students, you are, the things you say and do are really important. So are you aware of religious and cultural events outside of British ones? Not all of your students are going to have a Christmas holiday. Little things like that, really important. Number 2, I'd love to overhaul the whole curriculum. I can't do that right now, but what I could suggest is, are you doing assemblies? That's something you can do, right? All teachers get to do assemblies. Why don't you make it about positive UK Black figures, recommending Black literature to your students? And the third thing that I will just point out is, please don't expect, if you were a white teacher in a diverse school, I saw something about that, please don't expect your students or fellow Black staff to educate you, because actually that's your responsibility. And don't assume like, oh, hey, what book should I read to be anti-racist and things like that. Please don't do that. You need to go and do your research in your own time. There is an abundance of free resources online. As I said, Black literature, go to your library on Amazon, and you can find loads. And I appreciate, again, as a white teacher, that might be tiring to have to put in those even more extra hours in the week to learn, but you will never realize how tiring it is to be Black and actually have to face that oppression directly. So yeah, please don't complain about it either. Yeah.
I think there are lots of useful resources, easy to hand. Twitter is a very good source for those involved in education. EduTwitter has all sorts on there, and the BayMed network in particular is publishing great sets of this. So you don't have to look far if you want to educate yourself on this. I think we'll be coming back to the curriculum as well, because there are a number of questions on that one. But I know that teachers want to get this right. they really do care about this. So this isn't the sort of work that any teacher objects to. I think they object to all of the stuff coming down from on high in terms of bureaucracy and inspection and that sort of thing. This is good work for anyone involved in education to be involved in. Now, we've got I think a fairly similar question here, but it builds out beyond education. And I'm going to go to Sadia and then to Claire on this one. What can adults start doing, stop doing, do more of or less of to support young people in their understanding of the racism journey? Sadia, over to you.
Yeah, so thank you. I think for me, one of the most important things that you can do is, as well as educating yourself, to be an active listener and like listen to your students and listen to understand, you know, and be that person of support, because you know, looking back on my journey, I was very, very grateful to have teachers that kind of listened to me and that understood, you know, what I was going through. So like later on, I was able to understand for myself, you know. So I think that's a big thing. And in terms of something to stop doing, I do know that not all teachers do this, but some do. I'd say is labeling, like, and being careful and being aware of the negative and positive labels that you might be putting on certain students, because there's something called the self-fulfilling prophecy. Whereas if you're always labeling a student in a certain way, they even if they're not, you know, like that, they will start acting in the way that you're labeling them. So to be careful of negative labels and stereotypes as well. So I think those are the two from me.
I just want to come back to Lanai's point about the fact that it is not every Black person's job to educate others. Depending on where you are in your journey of discovery of your identity, it can be really, it can feel very intrusive if someone expects you to educate them. I'm someone who is quite outspoken and is happy to talk about my experiences, but for some people, they are still coming to terms with everything that's happening, and it is the way that their experiences of racism can cause long-lasting trauma that they may not want to talk about. And I think it is about being really respectful to the Black people that you do ask for advice for, and I think it is okay to say that you don't know all the facts. And I think it is important to say that, because even as a teacher, I've heard from such wonderful teachers that you are always learning. And I think admitting that is very powerful, especially when you're educating students about racism and how you are you lead as an example. I think one of the things that needs to stop is the differences between the way certain teachers treat white students versus Black students. I remember in high school having a teacher who would go through everybody's names and would call everyone by their first and second name. And when they would get to the names that were from different countries, from it was very it's the little things sometimes. I remember they would just skip over the Black students' names and just call us by our first names. And it's the little things like that, the little differences that students pick up on very easily. And over time, those are the things that can hurt the most. Yeah, I think unlearning things is great too. Sadia talked about unconscious bias, and I have to say that we all have unconscious bias, and unlearning is one of the most powerful things that you can do. I'm currently doing A-level chemistry, and one of the things that we have to do is a lot of unlearning from GCSE chemistry, and from that we're able to grow in our learning. From that we're able to understand concepts even better than before. And I think it is so important to take the time and unlearn so many things so that you can grow in your journey to being actively anti-racist.
Thank you. I think unlearning is harder than learning for the first time, but such a powerful point to make. Lanai, do you want to respond to any of those comments?
Again, thank you. That was really powerful. I think there's definitely, you're alluding to the fact it's really important just to have a safe space, isn't it, for teachers. I think we always use the term put yourself in their shoes. Sometimes we can't actually understand directly what your student might be going through, but if you can just listen, if you can show your students this is a safe space for everyone to come and have that chat. And I know I'm very how can I say it, very passionate about race and fighting racial injustice now, but I can assure you throughout high school I wasn't even using the word racism to describe my bullying, and I would never have spoken to any of my teachers about it. And I would love to say that we could stop racist teachers from becoming a teacher. Often you don't know that they might be holding unconscious bias. Definitely needs to be in the teacher training if it's not currently. But yeah, what we can do is to try and encourage, make that safe space and just listen when we can, because you can probably learn so much, can't you, as Claire and Sadia said. So.
Absolutely, and it's one of the things that we've been turning our attention to is our training and support that we provide people starting off on their careers. It's such a powerful opportunity for us to set things up right. No, there's lots of questions coming in around curriculum as well, which is it's so many different angles on this. I'm not sure we'll do all of these questions justice. Let's start with learning about Black history or literature from Black authors. Adam, I wonder if, I'm going to put you on the spot here, but I wonder if you could share what you have learned and what you would have liked to have learned as well.
Yeah, so I actually think this is a very, this has become more important to me, I guess, since like the BLM movement. Because so like at school I learned about, obviously we all learn about slavery, we learn about Windrush, and we learn about, I guess the atrocities that have happened to Black people. Also how Black people were, almost begged to come to England to help create the NHS and the transport in the UK, and then were exposed to all this racist activity in response or reactions from British people. And this comes back to exactly what we've been talking about, since the beginning, which is the whole anti-racist, racist, and then celebratory. And we can talk about, and we should definitely talk about the atrocities that have happened to Black people, because it makes us understand the duty we have to help Black people, to uplift Black people. It tells us why, so many Black people don't trust the institutions that exist in England, because for hundreds of years, for 1,000 years really, they've been mistreated. But at the same time, And this is also plugged to a BBC iPlayer documentary. If there's one thing I could recommend you all to watch, it would be this series called The African Renaissance, which looks at Ethiopia, Kenya, and Senegal. And it shows Black young people, stuff that we should be learning in school, which is how Christianity came to Ethiopia 1,000 years before it came to Europe, but also how Africa 500 years ago, how West Africa were creating the most unbelievable engravings in gold and ivory, and how they were being commissioned in trade by Europe, and how all this was happening, at the same time as the Italian Renaissance, but stuff that we don't study about. And when we bring this all back to the question of belief, about young people believing in themselves, this is so important, because this is what helps Black young people see that they can make a change, that they can excel in stuff that they're passionate about, because people just like them have been doing it for hundreds of years. We just haven't been learning about it.
Adam, just tell me the name of that link again. I didn't quite catch it when you were doing first round.
Yeah, it's called The African Renaissance. It's a 3-part documentary on BBC iPlayer.
On BBC iPlayer. I want to follow that one. Thank you for that. Claire, I think you might want to talk about literature as well.
Yeah, so throughout my almost 14 years of education, I have only ever studied one text, a poem written by a Black author, a Black poet, and that was on my GCSE spec. Granted, I did not end up doing my GCSEs, but I think it is very important to talk about the contents of that poem. It was a poem about the author's struggle with his identity, and how Black history had been watered down, and how a lot of the time British successes are talked about, but Africa's achievements and successes aren't celebrated. And whilst it was nice to have a woke day whilst we were studying that poem, I never talked about anything like that ever again in that English classroom. And I think it is so important that we integrate more Black poets, more Black authors into the curriculum, because then we get to have more conversations about that. And soon it will become a thing where we don't need to be talking about how Africa's history is never talked about, because it will be normalized. And that is really the goal. I am someone who absolutely loves books. When the BLM movement became popular, a lot of people asked me for advice about books to read, and I kept giving them different authors that I really enjoyed their portrayal of the identity as a Black person. And I have to say that nobody was really interested afterwards, after I told them the contents of the books and the stories that they unveiled. And it was quite shocking to me, because they had come to me in the first place, but because people had never read books that made them uncomfortable, they'd never read books that challenged their beliefs and their unconscious biases, nobody engaged. And I think we really need to make an effort, especially in curriculums, so that more young people are educated about this.
And Claire, I think you've picked up there on a theme that's come through in a couple of the questions and comments here about this not being a momentary thing. There's something from this year because of the tragic events that have happened this year and the resurgence of Black Lives Matters, and then we go back to business as usual, or one day in the calendar each year, or 1 month of the year as well. That's important about weaving it through as a permanent state of affairs. Several people have commented on that as well. We haven't got long left, unfortunately, and we could go for a lot longer with the quality of ideas that are being shared here. So thank you for that. I'm going to give the final word to Lanai, but I just wanted to make sure that you've had the chance to say all the things that you wanted to say as well. So I'm just going to go round the panel and just call and say anything that you would want to have been asked, any last parting thoughts. Sadia, can I start with you, then Adam, then Claire, and then Lanai can close for us.
Yeah, so like you said, like for me as well, this is not just a one-time thing, you know. A lot of work kind of needs to be done, and I think my piece of advice for everybody would be kind of just like look at, you know, your position, like where are you, and you know what impact can you make. We're all influencers. We could all make us, even if it's just a tiny impact, we can all make a tiny impact. So kind of just really just do the work inside and just look at yourself and be like, okay, what can I do? And you just go with that and keep on working. And I'm sure together I'm really hopeful that we can make the education system in Wales and England a more fairer and a more equal one. You know, a lot of work does need to be done. And I just wanted to say a message. I don't know if there's any head teachers here, but to kind of look into doing a review in your school. Speak to parents, speak to teachers, but also speak to students as well about how they feel about, you know, the school's attitudes towards direct racism, but also indirect. You know, this is something that we've talked about today. There's microaggressions, there's unconscious biases, there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And the only way to know, each school is going to be different. You have diverse schools, you have non-diverse schools, but there's racism in each, you know, so but each school will have to do a certain amount of work, you know, and there's always room for improvement. So if there's any head teachers here, and teachers as well, speak to your schools and find out, okay, let's do a review of the school, let's find out what are the issues here in terms of racism, and then pick one, start with one, and look at the solutions from there. And that's it from me. Thank you, everyone.
That's a practical call for action there that any school leader can act on. Adam, how would you like to round things off?
Yeah, if I can leave you with two things, I would say, I guess, collaborate and celebrate. And I think that means, you know, of course, as we've talked about, celebrate Blackness, and that's in your curriculum, in well-being classes and extracurricular stuff, ensuring that Blackness and Black culture is celebrated and uplifted. When we talk about collaborate, this is the call to action to all of you, to Teach First also, who's co-hosting this panel. And it's that if you really want to see change and help end racial inequity, then what we need to do is hear and work directly with Black youth. And that might be in making sure that education is fairer, in helping to improve your curriculum, and also in teacher training to ensure that teachers are doing the best they can, ensuring that you work with young people who can tell you exactly how impactful that training and that work will be. The answer is collaborate and celebrate. And thank you for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Your theme of celebration rings me through that. Claire, how would you like to?
I think I would just, if there's any call to action, I would like you to remember is just to challenge others, challenge yourself. As I have to just think about in high school how many different experiences of racism I saw others going through firsthand. And I was head girl at my high school, and I'd never seen or heard of anybody ever reporting it. So when you as a teacher, as a head teacher, as a member of staff within a place of education, actively challenges behavior from teachers to students, between teachers, between students. It means that young Black people, young POC in general, people who face discrimination, racial discrimination, feel safe around you and feel safe to talk about those things with you. And that's all we could ever want young Black children to feel like. We just want them to be safe. So please challenge behavior, racist behavior.
Thank you,
And
Claire.
thank you.
No, our pleasure. Lana, can you pull all of that together? Can you give us a conclusion on this? I want to give you the final word here.
Yeah, I'll quickly link to language. There's a lot about the way that we speak about things. So looking at the Atlantic slave trade, we need to learn about it, but acknowledge these are enslaved people stolen from their homes. I don't actually believe it should even be referred to as a trade, because I think that implies that this was a consensual swap, when actually the impact that's had is still very prevalent in today's society. So I think that's really important. And even the term BAME, I think if you're not part of that, I don't encourage you to use it, because I think it allows you to maybe indirectly make white and other, and actually the experience of all different ethnic minorities are so different. And I urge you all to educate yourself on all of those wonderful differences and celebrate them. And I think the other thing I wanted to say is that we hear this term, you can't see what, you can't become what you can't see. I think that's an issue, that a lot of us can't see Black teachers, we can't see ourselves in positions of power, but there are people like that. For Claire, you like science, there's a Black British scientist, Maggie Pocock. I would have loved to know that she existed in high school, or Benjamin Zephaniah, Bernardine Evaristo, but you don't hear about that. You're more likely in the media to see yourself portrayed as a criminal or in a negative way than actually something amazing. So I actually will reject the statement that you can't become what you can't see, because we can. The Black youth are incredible, as I think we've highlighted today, but let's not tell children you can become whatever you want if actually when they grow up in school, you have an environment where they are being seen for their characteristics they can't control opposed to their talents. So yeah, let's try and celebrate as much as possible. And then finally, to head teachers, how are you ensuring that your staff are obliged to fight and understand systemic and structural oppression that is in your school? Because it's in every school, it doesn't matter, it's everywhere. And we all have a duty to fight it, so that the next generation of our Black brothers and sisters can grow up and be whatever they want to be. So thank you.
Thank you. Those are the words to end on. Thank you to our panelists, and a real pleasure to listen and learn from you. So much to take away. There are a couple of minutes. I would have wished to overrun even longer, but to respect your time, we'll bring it to a close on that. And sorry we couldn't get to all of the questions. Thank you, everybody. I look forward to keeping the conversation going. Bye-bye.